especially when things are complex, if it's not tailored to you, what often ends up happening is businesses go back to a little bit of system here, a spreadsheet tracker here, email here, a shared drive, and it defeats the whole point. So
right.
Our view is that the only way we're going to unlock that automation and simplify for people is by that tailoring. And so definitely it's different each time, which presents a number of challenges. It unlocks a whole lot of benefit and automation opportunity. But the challenge is, like you've highlighted, is the setup. When you've got an out-of-the-box product, like you said, it's like, here it is. Sign up, start paying your license, away you go.
Yeah.
The pursuit of excellence is something we're all striving towards.
I want you to focus on what you do best.
You need to have an approval. How many approvals? What are the steps?
It's really about listening.
If it's not documented, it's not done.
Thanks for tuning into In Systems We Trust, the show where we dive into all things systems and processes and hear from the professionals that are using them to change the landscape of their organizations every day. Welcome back to another episode of In Systems We Trust. Today, I'm talking with Cameron Milnes. Cameron is the CEO of a Melbourne software company called Envisage. He's a fan of workflow, process, and technology, making it simpler for those involved. From his first business venture, he has always been driven to look for simpler, better ways for people to simplify and automate complexity. Envisage believes that businesses shouldn't need to change the way that they work to fit their tools. It should be the other way around. Welcome to the show, Cameron. How are you doing today?
Hi, Marquis. I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, thanks for joining today. I want to know a bit more about your background and obviously, Envisage. You're currently the CEO there. Can you just give us some more background on what Envisage does and what industry you find yourself in, and just give the listeners some more information there?
Yeah, sure. So we're a workflow software company. And particularly, our workflow helps field service. So solar installation, those Tesla Powerwall battery, any sort of complex installation that involves field workers. And what our software does is that it really streamlines the flow between those in the field and those in the back office. So we digitize the paperwork and just try and make it more clear and simple for everyone who's involved.
Okay. And so what's your background? I mean, you're the CEO. How did Envisage get started? Was it you working in the field, looking for a new tool, and you created this thing? How did it all come about? How did you, get to this point? Can you just fill us in there?
Sure. Yeah, no. So I've always been involved in workflow-related business, process-related businesses, and so a couple of other technology companies prior to Envisage. And my co-founders and I, we all come from a process background. So one of them's a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So I suppose we all had this focus on process and process improvement. And then the previous companies I had been involved with, we'd always been targeting workflow, trying to streamline, trying to digitize better. So that's how Envisage came about. And it wasn't originally directed only at field work or the field service industry. It was a bit more broad. However, over the last few years, that's a niche that's sort of been very well suited to us.
Okay. And how did you get to that space, really? I mean, let's talk about your role. You were in tech companies before. You're now the CEO here. Are you still doing any, kind of development work on your own? What does that look like? And what does a typical week look like for you, really?
Yes. So not doing any development work on my own. So Envisage keeps us busy these days. We have a team here in Melbourne and a team also in Europe. So the typical week is really working with customers from my side and our team. So we have a range of customers from small organizations to quite large energy retailers and large organizations. So my week will be really quite a mix between liaising with the teams onshore and offshore. And ultimately, I like to spend a lot of time with customers or understanding customers. So, around 30% of my week will be checking in with customers, or if we've got implementations happening for new clients, is sitting in or sitting across those with my colleagues.
Okay. And so what kind of issues are you really solving then? Can you talk more about your clients maybe, and the problems you're solving, and, where Envisage really, fits in?
Yes. Yeah. So the problems that we're solving is whenever there is complex field work to be done, complex paperwork, a lot of regulatory environments, such as like the energy sector. If you're installing solar, like everyone knows, solar, it's a sector for us. So solar panels on the roof, there's a lot of regulation around that, and rightly so. So really the complexity is the key niche where we operate, because our software is tailored to fit the organization perfectly and quite quickly. That's where that's a lot of the space where we operate. So the problems that we solve there are that before Envisage, you've got field teams who are using 20-page PDF documents, and they need it's not like you can have a one page. It's not plugging in your internet broadband, ticking a few boxes and saying job done. Right. This type of this type of field work, there's health and safety. There's like 3 or 4 different variants on the paperwork in the field, depending on the type of job. So whether it's a battery plus solar, whether it's for a large commercial or a small residential client. And so the big challenge that organizations have is that they've got to have, a mountain of paperwork. And what we do is that we digitize that so that the, field technician on their mobile can go and follow their nose, we call it, and get the right steps done. And so what we actually have underneath, which in terms of taking out the complexity, is logic. So if it's this type of job, show these sections. If it's large, complex, commercial, show these 4 commissioning sections. So taking the thinking out, and where that gets. I mean, if you picture these field guys, people who are doing installations, it's 40 degrees, let's say out in Australia on a hot day. You've got the sun shining, there's wind, you're on a roof. The last thing you want to be doing is trying to scribble on paperwork, or trying to figure out how a system works and what you should capture and what you shouldn't capture. So that's the main problem that we're solving, is like helping make it easier in the field. And then the other interesting part is the automation, that once we've got that information digitized, automating documentation, installation packs, emails out to customers and other people in the process. So there's really, sorry, it's a long answer to your question, Marquis, but there's 2 problems that we're solving. And one is this real challenge of complex field paperwork. And then the other is the downstream side of that is in the back office. There is, often there's a lot of documentation, and there's a lot of to and fro to arrange and get this installation work set up, and we'll automate various points there. And that saves a lot of time in the back office.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm interested to know what a typical engagement looks like for you and your customers. I mean, you talked about having, your team create a customized plan that really fits them, that eliminates this complexity, right? So do you have your own team? You said you're 6 Sigma black belts. Do you have your own team then of integrators that are going into these businesses and talking to them and, planning out, what the engagement looks like? Are you working with their project managers, or is your team then integrating with your clients' companies for, specific amount of time to get them onboarded, up and running, and to do all the process so that they can actually use Envisage. What does that look like? And is it different, from client to client, or is it typically we have one way of doing it? This is how it is. Can you explain a bit more there?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something we've been working on a lot over the last 4 years. So the first point there is it's definitely different for each organization. That's our whole belief, is that, especially when things are complex, if it's not tailored to you, what often ends up happening is businesses go back to a little bit of system here, a spreadsheet tracker here, email here, a shared drive, and it defeats the whole point. So
right.
Our view is that the only way we're going to unlock that automation and simplify for people is by that tailoring. And so definitely it's different each time, which presents a number of challenges. It unlocks a whole lot of benefit and automation opportunity. But the challenge is, like you've highlighted, is the setup. When you've got an out-of-the-box product, like you said, it's like, here it is. Sign up, start paying your license, away you go. When you've got a tailored
adoption
product,
rates go down.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, there's that model works great in some industries, and from a business perspective, it's much more scalable. However, our niche and how we're operating and our view on the world is a little bit different. So how we do the actual engagement is it's evolved, is probably the key point. So we work with partners sometimes, but we encourage clients to do their process work or think about their process up front. So we don't have a team internally that does, even though we have a background of consulting, we don't put people in to document the processes or to run process workshops. So that's one key thing. What we do though is that we have to gather the understanding of the organization to configure the software so that it fits like a glove. And to do that, we have a worksheet, a self-driven worksheet type process. So over the years we've evolved. We give the client access to our template site, which is, if you like, we've got a few different templates, and that's the starting point. And then the client has a worksheet which has embedded videos and steps them through in a sequence to help them get clear on their field workflow or the steps in their process, and to help them say, hey, I see the template, I like it, but we need, where our safety form looks a bit different here, here, and here. And we've got a special tab or we've got a special area which needs to be captured around commissioning. So we call it a delta. They start with their template, and then they capture the deltas or the changes against the template. And what we've found is that, like, you got to find a balance. So we found that this helps get to the end point of tailored to the organization more quickly than if we're actually running Zoom workshops, which is what we used to do.
Okay.
So it helps the organization to get in the frame and understand the structure of the software in their own time, and they get there more quickly than what we used to do, which was not so much running a process workshop, but doing the same, I suppose, requirements and understanding of their business via a workshop. And that's been really interesting because we're trying to find the heart for our clients, and it conversely, you say, oh, well, we can tailor everything to what you do, which is great. Like, you're not going to be stuck in like with a normal software product, which is great, but that involves time and understanding. So what we've evolved to is found that the best return on investment for our clients is some areas tailoring completely, and other areas just giving them the template and letting them choose. And it's different for each organization. So if we've already got, for example, a job safety an environmental analysis template, then they might have a real old paper one that they're using today, or they might not have one at all. It might be more informal. So by using the template as the start, we've saved them a lot of time, because they say, oh, great, we'll just take the JSA that's in the tool. I like that. Or we'll add this one section here. So that's a kind of a long answer, but it's been a very interesting journey for us, because if you imagine that when we started and we were more like focused, I suppose, on larger organizations, you run workshops, but then when you're trying to get this out to a broader range of organizations, you just can't, it's not going to work for a mid-sized client if you have to run workshops. So hence we've evolved and found this way that it actually reduced the amount of hours involved by a third. Sorry, down to 1/3. So reduced by 2/3. So
got it. That actually makes me think of something else, and I'm curious to know what your sales process looked like, and what your market research even looked like, because I know that as owners, we often think that our solutions are a no-brainer, right? Like, why wouldn't someone want to implement our software, our service, right? We do good work, we're solving a problem. And I think the area a lot of owners or founders get into in the beginning, and clarify if I'm wrong, but you guys have been at this 4 years, you said?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So, did you create, we understood that there was a problem. Did you create Envisage and go out there and say who wants it? Or were you trying to pitch? Or did you do the research to ask the questions? Did you have, any funding in the beginning? Were there early adopters? What did that look like, that research, to get to this point where you said, we are a contender in this space, we have a solution to your problem? Can you expand more on that?
Yeah, sure. So ours is definitely not the textbook approach. So what happened is that we always, the co-founders, we knew we wanted to focus on something that helped with workflow and digitization. Those are two. Workflow we all like and love, and digitization, we're like, this wave is washing through everywhere. Everyone needs to digitize, and it's only going to become more and more. Then we also, from a technology perspective, just what the speed at which you can set up software, compared to probably more like 10 years ago, is a big difference. So we saw those two things, and then we said we want to do something. We want to help organizations with workflow, and we actually had a few different types of workflow, because our platform is configurable, right? So even though we focus on field service, we're not limited to that in any way. We have a range of earlier clients in different areas. So we started off saying we want to simplify workflow. It doesn't need to be this complicated, and we want to be able to provide extreme tailoring or extreme flexibility to these organizations. That's how we started. Then as we did that, so we didn't have a specific narrow niche in mind. We just wanted to solve that problem, and we knew that there was a lot of waste there. As we went down that path, the customers that were getting the most out of our solution were those in field service. So, and particularly, so we had some early renewable energy, so solar and electric vehicle charger installation. And the market research, or the customer research, was there was no early funding. We got into some organizations and solved some problems. We sort of spread within those organizations, I think primarily because we were solving, these workflow or digitization problem, and then one colleague in one business department would talk to another. And this is one of our clients is called AGL. They're one of the largest energy retailers in Australia. And so it spread like that. And then we had, if you like, so a few different organizations that we started with like that. And then we started seeing the spread and just customers getting a lot of value in the renewables / complex field service space. So if you like, we started off broad and we were pulled by customers solving a problem, and then like the way that the field service industry often operates is you've got subcontractors who are supplying installation services, and we started getting some of those subcontractors contacting us to say, hey, we've been using your product at blah blah blah, this organization. Hey, we like what it seems it can do. Can you run us through it? So I suppose to answer your question, the research was sort of getting pulled in that direction, and then we deep dove with some of those organizations and then realized that what we were doing was really well suited to them, and that's where we put our focus.
That's really interesting. So yeah, it seems that you're definitely customer centric, right? You're hearing from them, you're presenting to them, you're solving a real problem, you're taking your time implementing for their specific needs. And so what does your roadmap kind of look like? And I'd like to know what systems Envisage is using for their builds, for their project management, for a lot of this stuff, right? And is the platform, continued to be developed on? Are you taking customer feedback, adding that to the roadmap? What does that look like? And how do you manage it all with your team behind the scenes?
Sure. Yeah. So the roadmap, absolutely, the product is evolving.
Okay.
So the roadmap has two real key areas. One is automation. So more and deeper automation. So and if looking back over our roadmap, we started off, if you like, with the core workflow, and then we've been automating parts like all those emails that happen as a job progresses through. So as a job is scheduled, once the job is done, the summary report pack out. Like when I say email, I mean customer emails. So nice branded templates that come from a particular organization. Okay. Hey, Marquis, we'll be on site next Tuesday. Here's the checklist. Here's our safety checklist for you to think about before we're at your property. And then reminders, and then after the job, here are photos from the job and a nice packaged up customer branded report. So these don't look like they don't come from Envisage, they come from our client. And that's really just that one point in one organization was almost one FTE. So because there's regulations here where you have to provide installation license numbers and evidence serial numbers all in this pack. Humans are often doing that because it's very messy and the data's in different places. So sort of looking back, that's one example, but there's quite a few. But continuing to automate more and more is on the roadmap. And we're doing that at the moment with automation with financial providers. So trying to automate more of the invoice process.
Okay.
So we plug into Xero and complete hands off. A job is done. You now in Envisage, it'll send via API to Xero. Xero will send to the customer and send a bill and log a bill for whoever did the work, like a subcontractor. So more automation on the horizon. And the second area is integration.
Okay.
So we have a REST API. We plug into Xero, but we want to plug into lots more tools and other financial providers. So we've heard from customers, or we've missed some customers because we have a very smooth out of the box integration for something like Xero, but not something for QuickBooks and things like this.
I see.
So yeah, on the roadmap, more automation, more integration. Those are two very key areas. And the third area on the roadmap that we're working for which we've always been working at, is right now that tailoring that we do of the solution. It doesn't happen by technical team members because our solutions are low-code solution. So it happens by a configuration team of non-technical people. That it's almost like a CMS, like a massive content management system.
Yeah.
So right-click, add field, add form, trigger notification. Our aim is to get all of that out to the customer. So right now, to do the setup, we streamlined it a lot. You fill out the worksheet and then our configuration team will tailor it, and you get the software that feels like it was built exactly for your business.
Awesome.
The next evolution for us is, you can have our team support or guide that process, or you can just do it yourself. And then as your business changes, you don't need to come back to Envisage and say, hey, we're expanding into a new area. I need these new forms and a new workflow. You just do it all yourself. So that's the other key area on our roadmap, which is running all the time. Because again, we've heard from customers that they love that tailoring. Some need some help, but others want to be able to, just do it themselves. And of course, there's less cost and effort involved with that.
I can imagine that, that model where you give them the plan, they do it themselves, opens up the door for, churn or low adoption. Like, how do you combat that right now? Is that an issue, or is it so custom tailored that people pick it up and they can implement it and run with it with their own teams?
Yeah, at the moment, we're kind of, I suppose, halfway along the journey. So because we haven't got the full customer doing their setup completely themselves, it's on the roadmap, but it's not out there yet. So because we haven't got that, it's hard to say. But once we have that feature, it'll start with forms. Once forms are pushed out or made available to the end user to set up and edit themselves, then I suppose it definitely could produce more churn because there's less involvement. But then I think that's where, how can I say, the remote or the support is part of that setup process. Like that the worksheet. If we start experiencing churn, we'll come back to the worksheet and say it's just got to be a seamless experience that where people step through that, set themselves up, and say, get rolling and say, hey, well, that was so straightforward. If I think if we get churn, then we'll probably come back to that and say, how do we make that onboarding better? And tackle it that way, because we know the need is there. We know that especially ongoing, clients want to be able to just move and adjust themselves, and we've got the technology now that makes it available. So it's just about I suppose bridging the gap so that they can get there and do that as quickly and efficiently on their side as possible.
Okay. And I want to get into like your systems as well, like what your team uses, just to really drill down into that. So to clarify, are you using Envisage yourself as a team as well? Or do you have like some other ERP, or using Jira for some of your development? What does that look like? Or is it all within your tool as well?
So a good chunk of it is within our tool.
Awesome.
So and there's neat things like our integration into Xero, for example. We first piloted on ourselves that feature. So we run, we run all of that through the tool, through our tool, our internal. It's called Collaborate. Our internal. Well, it's just our software that we use internally.
Okay.
And so we'll capture the commercials. That'll flow through and produce invoices in Xero, and we do our PIRs, the post-implementation review, and resourcing through that tool. So there's a good chunk of it that happens there. The other tools that we use is that we use GitHub quite a bit. So especially the development team are using GitHub. So we will log feature requests and issues in GitHub. So in a similar way to Jira, and then we have like a visual board, like a Kanban board set up, and that's how we'll pull items through. And people talk about obviously the pandemic, and that recently we have office in the CBD, but a lot of our interaction with our team, being dispersed, has been through tools like GitHub and our software for some time. And even our implementation with customers was at Zoom well before the pandemic. So yeah, those are the two key points in our stack. We also use Slack, and we have some neat things, like, again, because we integrate with Slack, our product. So as part of the post-implementation review, our team capture what we call customer gold, and it's voice of the customer stuff, right? So unfiltered and positive remarks, and so they'll capture that in Envisage, and then Envisage will push to a Slack channel. So it's just a nice way to get that feel good. It's why we're here, right? Hearing about how you've solved the problem, hearing about how people are spending half the time they used to, because they're not having to go back to the depot and complete paperwork. So that's really neat, because if you're an engineer, you don't hear that stuff, right? And that is why we're here, and it's very satisfying, and it's their work which is creating, solving these problems. So so that's pretty cool. And that's the other part of tools that we use is we use a lot of the Google suite. So Google Sheets, Google Docs, it's our preference, especially because, being a dispersed team or a distributed team, it's Google Docs in particular, Google Docs and Google Sheets is very useful.
Okay. Who would you say manages all of this? Like, do you have a product owner or project manager that, creates the processes, the systems to, keep the team moving? Is it a collaboration effort? Like, I'd love to know what those iterations look like. If you guys are running sprints, who champions it? And like, what does that really look like for your team as far as how you're following and creating your own systems and processes?
Yes. Yeah, it's very much collaborative. So we're a small team, and it's very much collaborative. So there's a few of us, I suppose, that have been around a while, or that set the bones in place. But then that was just a start, I suppose. As we move through, it's collaborative and it's evolving. So we do run weekly sprints, and we have those set up very similar to Jira, but in GitHub.
Yep. And
that's how we'll prioritize roadmap items and issues, and we log everything in there. Excuse me. So yeah, I suppose, if you like, the initial framework was set up by the core team, but then it evolved over time, and we're constantly testing and trying to tweak and improve. So, moving 2-week sprints to 1-week sprints, to do we have stand-ups and have like a whiteboard? Do we just use GitHub? And so that's been evolving, and it's the same way with the setup of a new customer. So we have templates for that, but that's always moving, and it's not a particular person who's driving that. It's someone has an idea on how to improve I'll give you an example for the training or onboarding of users. So someone had an idea with that, saying, hey, we used to do these tailored guide, if you like, high level, but a guide for each client. And then someone said, hey, that's like a low ROI activity. The thing everyone loves about the software is that it is follow your nose. It's simple. We should just, and no one likes docs anyway. Like people like videos, right? So
Yeah.
there's a field technicians, like they're not going to be, before they go out like 5 a.m. on a job, they're not going to be reading through documents. So we tried switching to short generic video for the role, like say field installer, and that's it. Whether you're a large organization, a large energy retailer with hundreds of users, or a small electrical contractor with 10, you get the same video, which runs through the basics of, this is how you get your way around the system. Don't forget to save. This is how you change stage. Get out there and install. That's kind of it. And the thing is that the value in terms of customers, there isn't any drop off, right? They use the tool just as well. They actually engaged more with the videos, and we got feedback like, hey, we like this. This is clean. This is simple. We don't want to be sitting running a training session. We just want to send someone a video and then off they go. So that's an example where someone in the team had said, we've always got to be looking for that high ROI for our clients. And someone said, hey, this is a better way of doing it. And we tested it, and it is a much better way. So it saves us time, and it's more clear for customers. So I think that very much our internal processes, you can see from that example, are evolving based on like mini tests and what works with customers and what works with us.
Which is how it should be. Yeah. And obviously in your role, you're talking with a lot of your customers, right? And so you're getting that feedback. And I can imagine it doesn't always go according to plan. So like, if you had to, sum it up, just as we're, drawing to the end here, what would you say is one thing that, owners, operators, these businesses or organizations, are missing or not considering when it comes to workflow management or systems and processes? Is there one thing that you would want to communicate to them, or that you do often to communicate to them to get them to adapt to your tool or adopt your tool?
Yeah, I think one really key thing is it's worth spending the time on this. So whether you use our software or no software, whether you just continue with what you're doing, the message that I suppose I like to get across is, if you're taking the time to look at your processes and your workflow, you will identify some improvements, and that alone is worth it and will help your organization. And you don't want to. It's tempting if you're in the field service space or any space where there's workflow to be like, we're so busy, we've got to execute, and not zoom back. And I just think my message or key thing would be, that's so important. And, and anyone who's involved with process and process improvement work, is you'll get like at least a 3-4x 3-4x payback. You will, the improvements are there. And so that would be my takeaway. I saw one of our clients that got set up recently, and they had all these user guides and warranty and manual, if you like, that was being sent to customers. And it provided some value to the end customer, like, Pete, who had his solar system installed, but not a lot of value. Like, they're not looking, they only go to those manuals when they need to. It's not as though they arrive and then they read the email and start reading the manual warranty information. So nothing to do with our software, but that client through the process went, hey, I can just include a link in an automated email from Envisage that takes the customer back to our site, and then we update our site a little bit so that customers can self-serve, put in their model number and find their manual and warranty. And so things like this, I look and say,
love it.
Like, that's a small thing, right? It's nothing to do with our software. They could just have another auto email that goes out, but it's saving the back office time. Like, before, a person was actually looking through, going to a shared drive, attaching all these documents, sending the email. Customer wasn't probably reading it, but they kind of felt they had to do it. So yeah, that would be my one takeaway, is whether you use our software or other software or not, is spend the time to zoom out and take a look and improve the way that the work flows.
It's a great way to close it out. Thank you so much for that. So Cameron, where can people keep up with you? Where are you posting? Are you blogging? Are you hanging out online? And where can people find you?
Yes, yeah. So envisage.com. That's EMVISAGE.com. So we have a blog there. They can find us there. Also on LinkedIn. Those are probably the two best ways to follow or to reach out.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for being on the show today, Cameron. I really appreciate it. This is an amazing conversation. Thanks for your time today.
Great. Thanks, Marquis. See you later.
Yeah. And so if you like what you heard, or watched today, please don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, depending on where you're listening to this or watching this today. And if you found it helpful and you can think of a friend, colleague, family member who would benefit from this conversation, please do me a favor and share this with them. Again, all the links from today's show will be in the show notes. And you have a lot of choices when it comes to podcasts to listen to. So thank you for spending your time listening today. Thanks again, Cameron, for being on the show. And to the listeners and viewers, we will see you next time. If you like what you heard today, please like, subscribe, and follow on your preferred channel. If you know of a friend or colleague that would benefit from hearing this conversation, please share it with them so that we can reach more listeners just like you. As always, all the links from today's talk will be in the show notes. And remember, if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. We'll see you next time.